Hi, everyone. So I'm so excited to welcome our first speaker of the day, Karlyn Percil. Looking forward to hearing from her for like weeks now. And I know that Karlyn has so much to offer on the topic of emotional intelligence, listening to ourselves, understanding our emotions as data, and leading from a place of integrity. We were just chatting, and I know she went to grab some water. So I think she's good to go. We can see. But yeah, we're welcoming her, and she'll be kind of teaching us for the next half hour. Karlyn, if we can bring you up. Cool. Perfect. I'll turn my camera off and you have the floor.
Oh, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I really wish we could have been in person, but I'm pretty sure that we will all get together at some point. I was telling Abigail, I'm hoping this is not the only Imagine That conference. So at some point, we will connect again. So as Abigail mentioned, my name is Karlyn Percil-Mercieca. We only have about half an hour together. So I want to make sure that we get through some of the topics and conversations that I want to have around emotions today. So just to give you a breakdown in terms of what today will look like, I will be sharing with you some of the concepts around emotions, emotional intelligence. There'll be a little bit of science, there'll be a little bit of storytelling. If you have a question, please type it in the chat. If there is something that you'd like to say and you're like, hey, Karlyn, I have an insight into that, or would like to share something, please, and this is where, Abigail, I'm going to lean on you to bring that person to my attention in terms of providing that navigation. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Let's see. Yes? Abigail, can you let me know via voice? I can't see when I'm sharing. I can't see anyone else.
I can see your screen, yeah.
Everybody can see my screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I am just going to use one of my favorite titles to use to introduce myself. Background-wise, I spent 20 years in the banking industry. I'm born and raised in St. Lucia in a tiny village called Bas-la-Bowie. And when I moved to Toronto in 2003, this is where I guess you can say I really got to understand the power of emotions. So I call myself an Afro-Caribbean queen as part of my way of reclaiming my identity and also asserting myself in the world based on my terms. So my whole philosophy, and Abigail, I really love that you talked about, the whole topic and concept around Imagine That is all about, for me, dreaming bigger. And dreaming bigger is something that I have been practicing for a while, especially when I look at my history and my past, going through a lot of trauma as a young child, growing up in the Caribbean, going through different types of abuse, bullying at school. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have some of the stories as well as part of your narrative right now. And that also robbed me from fully exploring and identifying who is Karlyn, who do I want her to be. And one of the things that I'll share with you today is how important storytelling is and why storytelling plays such an important role, not just in understanding your emotions, but also understanding self and identity. So my whole philosophy is all about dreaming bigger. Dreaming bigger, for me, it's about creating a world that reflects your definition of success and what it means to be authentically you. Dream bigger is just about being. And what does that look like? And to be quite honest, today I am 44 years old and I am still exploring who Karlyn is. I am still exploring who do I want her to become and what is her legacy? Dreaming bigger is also going beyond the colonized way of thinking and being. I wish I had this conference growing up, having the language, having the ability for us to have discussions around topics that impact us, not just in our personal lives, but also when we interact with the larger world as well. Dreaming bigger is about how do you want to lead your life and what is the difference that you'd like to make? And I also use that to explore and surprise myself and see what else can I do? What else can I create? Because the more I dream, the only way that actually helps me to build the world as I imagine it, but not just as I imagine it, but also going beyond my imagination as well. So I want to, invite you as you think about today, imagining that explore, play with some of the concepts that you have been given in terms of how do I see myself? If I play, with some of the words or language that has been shared with me, what does that look like? And as you can see here, one of my favorite photos here with this photo with me screaming out loud. For me, I want to use style, fashion, and poetry as a way of expressing myself versus the stereotypes that have been imposed on me as a Black immigrant woman living here in what we now call Canada. So one of my favorite quotes that I guide myself by, and I love Abigail, your quote by Toni Morrison as well, is another one of my favorite. I often go back to this quote when I am afraid, whether it's that, that fear of articulating myself or expressing my ideas or my dreams, or even just, adding my voice to a conversation. When I'm often afraid, I go back to this quote, or I go back to other Black powerful women who have walked a similar path before. And I use those words also as part of my, expression of self to keep me moving forward. So this quote by Audre Lorde, I want you to remember it. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. So today we're talking about power, about emotions as data, but what is the role emotion plays when it comes to our identity? And I wanted to share this intersectionality framework with you from Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. And and some of you may have seen it before, but there are so many different markers or pillars or ways by which we identify self, or how we express ourselves in the world, or how we position ourselves in the world. What intersectionality does, it gives us additional language and lens, but it also used, especially from a systemic perspective, to identify advantages and disadvantages that are felt by people due to a combination of factors. Now, as you heard me say earlier, race as an imposed identity, or even ethnicity and culture, coming from a place of a white gaze, where my identity is designed or defined for me through the lens of white supremacy or patriarchal culture. Understanding, how do you stand, or how do you identify yourself, like whether you use your race, your gender, your ethnicity. I just want you to think about expression of self. Where is that voice coming from? Whose language am I using? And most importantly, which part of those identity markers are either used as an advantage or a disadvantage as well? So just some language and some insight so that you can think about as you move forward in terms of identifying self. And the second thing that also influences our emotions around how we see ourselves is the impact of what I call a colonized mindset. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when we talked about race, when I talk about, describing myself as an Afro-Caribbean queen, that for me is a way of me reclaiming my identity. Yes, sometimes I use the word I'm a Black woman, and that in itself, we inherited so many stereotypes and so many other, negative and dehumanizing connotations based on the systems of racialization and the systems of white supremacy. And with the creation of race as a social construct, in addition to a lot of the, the impact that we're still feeling today, both on the systemic, on the social side, it also created what I call the colonized mindset. Because at one point, I believed that my Blackness was a burden. There was one point I believed my gender as a woman, I did not have a place in this world, or that place was actually designed or defined by how other people saw me. So I want you to think or remember when you are looking at yourself from the lens of, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Or you might be the only, which has happened for me several times, the only Black person or the only person of color in the room. I question my position, or even my authority on the subject that I'm speaking on. So how I reclaim, or I take that back, is looking at, am I operating from a colonized mindset? Right? Am I operating from the imposed identity of racial ideologies? Am I believing that I have imposter syndrome and I don't belong there because of the overrepresentation of whiteness as the norm? Am I unconsciously operating from a white supremacy cultural norm, right? Perfectionism, a sense of urgency, worship of the written word, et cetera, et cetera. Working from an individual capital versus the village impact model. Abigail and I were just talking about the power of community and how great it is to be with every single one of you, learning from each other, sharing ideas, sharing concepts, and most importantly, sharing your biggest takeaways on what will be different because you attended Imagine That. As I mentioned earlier, when I operated from my colonized mindset, I actually thought that my ethnicity and my culture is a weakness, right? It's not a strength, or I have to fit in. I had to remove parts of myself, or in some cases, suppress certain parts of myself because I was so desperate to fit in. And then there's the inability to internalize personal achievement and to celebrate one's accomplishment. This is where also we continue to socialize ourselves with, I call it the WTAH, which is working twice as hard to prove yourself, or the WWPT disease, which is what will people think? And just to give you another example of what is the impact of an imposed identity on self, on how we see ourselves and our confidence and our self-esteem. That's another example, the Superwoman Syndrome, or the Strong Black Woman Syndrome, which was designed, developed by Dr. Cheryl L. Woods Giscombe. And again, this imposed identity, once it is a part of our language and how we describe self or how we see self, and if it is the dominant narrative that society, meaning the media and other people we encounter, if that is the identity they use to see us or to interact with us, again, we tend to live up to that expectations, both on the conscious and the unconscious lens. So going back to just to do a little bit of a recap of what we talked about so far, what informs our identity and views of self, right? Like I said, when I looked at how I described Karlyn, how I saw Karlyn, the things that actually influenced my lack of confidence and lack of self-esteem, a lot of those narratives do not necessarily belong to me. These were narratives I inherited from, and then this is a framework I designed called the Spec Framework. So I often say, when you find yourself struggling to find your truth or to believe in yourself, because inherently, every single one of you, you are brilliant, you're powerful, and you have everything you need to make your dreams come true. But sometimes the narratives that we have inherited about ourselves, interfere with that understanding or that belief. So the Spec Syndrome stands for just a reminder to remove your spectacles, or to inspect your spectacles in terms of how you see self and how you're describing self. So for example, white supremacy. So S stands for the inherited narratives we're using to describe self. Did it come from white supremacy lens or gaze? And we see the impact of the socialization of white supremacy or white superiority through our schooling system, the books, societal norms and language, the places we work at, social media, patriarchy, perspectives around work, or how women should behave, or how we govern our bodies. A lot of, the ideologies that we're fighting right now. When I think about the Olympics with the team who wanted to not wear bikinis, and the body who governed, them said, no, you do not have authority to choose how you dress for you to play sports. So again, this is just to invite you to think about where you're getting your narrative from, because the narrative we inherit, it is tied to our emotional data, and also emotions are addictive. So sometimes when we are not clear about where we are getting the story we're telling ourselves about ourselves from, that creates an emotional addiction cycle. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. Do we have any questions or anything in the group chat anyone would like to say or add? Abigail?
We can save them till the end if you'd like.
Okay, all right, no problem. So emotions as data, and I love using this quote by Doc Ammon, and it just really crystallizes and tells us where emotions are coming from, or how the body and the brain process emotions. So your thoughts and feelings come from your past memories. If you think and feel a certain way, you begin to create an attitude. An attitude is a cycle of short-term thoughts and feelings experienced over and over again. And this is where that emotions are addictive comes from, the whole concept. If you string a series of attitudes together, you create a belief. When you add beliefs together, you create a perception. And this perception, because the brain is lazy and we only operate from about 5 to 10% of our conscious mind, majority of the decisions we make, it comes from our subconscious mind. If we are not challenging the stories, the inherited stories, the narrative that I got around being a Black woman, if I did not challenge those stereotypes and reclaim my identity, it means that my belief about who I am, what I can accomplish, how far I can go in terms of my dreams and my desires would be limited, because my belief system is built on thoughts and feelings that said that Karlyn, as a Black woman, do not belong at the leadership table. She does not belong in a lot of the places that she's trying to get to. Because again, as we dream big and we go outside of our comfort zone, it means that you're creating something. Just like this, imagine that concept. It was an idea in Abigail's head, and she was brave enough to not just dream, but to dream big enough to bring this conference to every single one of you. Now, your emotions, I said emotions are data, and it comes from our past, and we create our stories based on the thoughts and the narratives we inherit. The other thing that I want you to know about emotions is that more than 75% of the signals we send to ourselves and others in terms of communication are non-verbal.
Karlyn,
so that means, yes.
Hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt. This is Jocelyn. I just wanted to let you know that your slides are not advancing, and I'm sure there's a lot of incredible information. So I just wanted to let you know that. So if you want to just kind of.
Thank you. Do you remember? Let's see.
I'll stay on until we have them up and moving. I just want to make sure everyone can see all of this.
Okay, let me reshare. Are you seeing impact of a colonized mindset?
Yes, we're now on that one there.
Okay, so you didn't see this before?
No, we were still on the very first one. Is the one it was showing. So yeah, so I don't know if you want to put it into present mode, if that might also fill the screen, because right now we can see the slides on the side. So just wanted to let you know.
It's not in present mode. Okay, on my end, unless I'm not presenting it right, let's see. Let me go back to. No, this is share video. And we did this in practice and it worked.
Isn't technology wonderful? But we can see it the way that you had it. So, I mean, if that's the only way it's working, I just wanted to let you know they weren't advancing for us. That's all.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you, Jocelyn. But then it also means that you probably will not, you won't. Can you see this now?
So we can see. Yes, now it's in full screen mode. It's perfect. Okay. I apologize for interrupting you, Karlyn. I will let you get back to your wonderful presentation.
All good. Thank you for letting me know. I wish I knew earlier. I'm just going to flip through these, and I'm happy to share the slides so you can have it and have a discussion after as well. So this was just the imposed identity and the brain's a framework to just interrogate your subconscious mind, because 90% of the decisions we make or where our communication thoughts, it comes from our subconscious, which comes from our past memories. This is why I'm pretty sure you've heard about a huge part of self-care is being mindful and being present in your day-to-day and not multitasking, because when we multitask, we reduce our capacity and our ability to that of an 8-year-old or even younger. So it's important for us to, again, just be present in our lives. And I shared this slide here in terms of really expanding your vocabulary in terms of describing what you're feeling. Words have so much power. When we say we're sad, Are you limiting your ability to fully understand what you're going through and also how you would like to express yourself? So I invite you to create, especially on this slide, you can even make it an activity. Like, when you look at the word sad, what's the other language that I can use to express myself? Same thing for mad and joyful. And also, there are no bad emotions. Emotions are just data. Everything we feel, think of it as a communication tool to help you know when you are going off path in terms of your values, or it's an indication that, hey, something's off. Karlyn, you're feeling a little bit bored. What's going on? Are you tired? Have you overextended yourself? Or in some cases, do you need some quiet time? So it's important for us to really understand that the more we expand on our emotional vocabulary through self-awareness, if you find yourself using the same language all the time and you're not getting the insights that you need, I invite you to expand on your vocabulary as well. And also, language is also very political. If you are coming from a different ethnic and cultural background, and you have friends as well, even if you're not from that background, I invite you to also speak to them and ask them, what's that word in your language? What's a different way of saying it? Because there are certain words used to describe self and how we feel that is not, we don't have a corresponding word in the English language. So again, give yourself permission to go outside. In St. Lucia, where I'm from, we speak French Creole, nous parlons patois. So when I speak to my parents, they use, French Creole is their first language. So I use that word. So moi fâché, I'm angry, I'm mad. So I use my ethnic language to also describe and express how I feel as well. So why I spent so much time on story and understanding, the impact of an inherited identity, why it's important for us to interrogate it and to invite and reclaim our authentic truth, is because this is your brain on data. We have two connection points, your brain on story. Why is it so important? Because story helps us find meaning. It helps us to make sense of the world. It helps us to frame how we would like to move around in the world, but also to share our understanding with each other. It frees up energy, right? In terms of what is being covered up. Like once you start interrogating the story, or even just asking questions, I'm not feeling the greatest, Karlyn, what's going on? The second I ask myself that question, it means I've engaged my prefrontal cortex, right? This is where, and this is the area where we use our analytical skills. We tap into our values. We're able to make decisions based on the present. And again, stories allow us to redefine who we are and how we want to live our lives. And it teaches us our own narratives instead of blindly accepting what the world society has taught us to think about ourselves. So I want you to remember that if there are some stories, inherited stories, that no longer serve you, get your pen, get your paper. This is why, they say that affirmations and writing journaling is so powerful, because this is how you can reprogram your subconscious brain. So how do you leverage the intelligence of your emotions? Here's the thing. Your emotions as data, there are 3 key ingredients I want you to remember, and I want you to start practicing. So there's the feeling component. How do I feel in my body? And this concept was developed by clinical psychologist, Dr. Kevin. So emotions is a bodily sensation. For me, my emotions are usually here. I know it when there's something that's coming up for me in my throat. Also, my palms get a little bit sweaty. And then there's that sinking butterfly feeling in my stomach as well. And this is where the self-awareness and present is so important, being present in your life. Because then when you ask yourself, what am I feeling? Where is that emotion? This is how we also tap into the power of also disrupting our emotions as well. So it doesn't go on this automatic, or what we call automaticity. Because once our body understands, oh, usually Karlyn, her throat gets really tight, right? When it's an emotion that she's very uncomfortable with, whether it's sadness or, or fear or shame. What is the thinking part? What do I say to myself? Sometimes what I say is depending on the context of the situation. I might say, oh, Karlyn, who cares? Nobody cares. Or, maybe, you're not good enough. Like a lot of the negative language comes up because of the feeling that shows up. And what I have associated with that feeling, the tag that I have for that feeling is fear or it's shame. right? So then what I say to myself follows that feeling, because my brain and my body, they've actually programmed that whole sequence. And the last one is the behavior piece, what I do. Now, over the next couple of weeks, I want you to start keeping an emotions diary. Like just observe, how do I feel in my body? What I say to myself. So this is where your self-talk tape comes in. And then what do I do? Do I shut down? Do I withdraw? Do I stop talking? Do I stop sharing? Do I finish that bucket of ice cream in one go? What is at the end of that behavior? And this is how you truly tap into the power of your emotions, because now you understand, hey, I know what I do, even if I don't know what I say to myself or how I feel. At least you can interrupt the doing part. Now, how do we move forward to ensure that we're grounding ourselves in our truth and not from the lens of the white gaze, or, for white supremacy or white superiority lens? Leaning on your cultural capital. Your cultural capital, is the work of Dr. Tara J. Yosso. And she talks about, it's an array of cultural knowledge, skills, abilities, and contacts possessed by socially marginalized groups that often go unrecognized and acknowledged. And this is a huge part of race as a social construct and the systems of racializations, disconnecting us from our culture and our ethnic culture. But not only that, but also downplaying the wisdom that we have also inherited from our culture and from our ancestors as well. So it's important to recognize that and to bake that in. So how do you continue to leverage the power of your emotions and to ensure that when you are looking for that more options in terms of what I do, or what do I do, or what do I say to myself? You want to say something that's more grounded in your ancestral truth. This is where you can pull that data from. And all of this exercise and what I'm suggesting for you to continue doing, once you start doing the work with one of your imagine that, buddies, your accountability partner, I encourage you to team up with each other after and share the learnings, what you loved, what is a little bit still like, hey, this was very interesting, but I want to learn more. Speak with each other. You'll be able to lean on each other's wisdom as well. So build your ancestral table. What have you learned about dreaming, the pursuit of joy and desire from your ancestors, living and past? And how will you craft your ancestral chant, a mantra or affirmation? What is that thing that you heard from your mom or your grandma or your granddad? Something that people are like, oh, you remind me of auntie so-and-so. I get that a lot. I had an aunt, she loves accessories. So every time, and I actually have a piece of her jewelry, and every time I wear it, I remember her and I'm connected to her, because she was one of those very few people in my family who became, an entrepreneur. So when I get into that zone of fear or things are not working out, I lean on her wisdom. I put on her bracelet, I carry her with me, and I remind myself that I can do this. Dream in threes, your future self, your family, your community, global lens. What would you like to see in this world? How do we build back better? We want to hear from you. So your dreams, if you have a dream that, kind of fits in my dream, or you're like, Karlyn, if we partner, that dream can go even bigger, absolutely reach out. This is a part of building our ancestral legacy. And again, normalize celebrating your whole self. The brain has a negativity bias. So this is why sometimes we might find ourselves in a negativity loop. There is nothing wrong with you if you find yourself going there. Just observe it. And again, go back to those three. Okay, how do I feel in my body? What do I say to myself? And what do I do? And again, choose something else. This is I call it the 3 C's coach-like approach. Use this also as you recognize, hey, my behavioral component for this particular emotion, I'd like to change it. You can use the 3 C's. Is probably the most important skill and tool that you will have as part of your toolkit, your confidence and self-esteem toolkit. Get curious about the emotions you feel, the words that are coming up in your mind. Again, and ask yourself, where is it coming from? Is it coming from my inherited identity, or is it coming from my truth? Extend compassion to self as you bridge the gap between knowledge and application. And again, have the courage to take that step, whether it's sharing your idea with a friend, sharing your intention or your goal with a friend, or even just saying, I want to speak kinder to myself. Abigail, can you be my accountability partner? And if you hear me saying something that's not very kind, or if I'm downplaying my gifts, can you hold me accountable and remind me of this mantra? Again, we're not meant to journey together. So lean on your community of with each other so that you can continue building on your dreams, but most importantly, building your dreams in the way that you would like to do it. So my final words to you, I know I rushed through, it was a lot. If you have any questions, I am here. Even after, feel free to message me. I want you to be disruptive, be bold, be too much, ask for more. If you're not getting the answers, you need to continue asking until you get it. Believe in yourself and trust yourself. Even if the answer, the step you're about to take, you're not 100% sure, that's okay. You're sure enough in the moment right now. And with that step, you set the standard for not only how you would like to treat yourself, but also how you would like others to treat you as well. And remember, you are the biggest authority on you. I believe in you and your dreams. Thank you so much for having me. I really hope you found this, a little bit helpful, and I can't wait to continue having conversations with all of you. Thank you.
That was incredible. All the volunteers and I were saying that we want you to start a podcast. If you need an assistant, let us know. All of us are ready. We'll move to Toronto. Truly, we're prepared. And you have some questions in the chat. You can take some time to answer them if you have any.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to thank you. And that is not the first time I've heard this, so I'm making a check mark. This is keep coming up.
Please make a podcast, please. You already have however many listeners. We're all ready.
Thank you, Leah.
One of the questions in the Q&A is, what do you wish you could go back and tell your teenage self?
Oh boy. What I would go back and tell her, because one of my, and just to be a precursor, trigger warning, because one of the biggest elephant stories I have is being a survivor of child sexual abuse. So I spent my entire teenage years blaming myself, carrying the shame. I had that shame in a special handbag. I brought it with me everywhere I go. So I think the one thing that I would tell her is that it's not your fault. You are worthy, you are good enough, and you will overcome this. It's not going to become your story or your narrative, but as a matter of fact, you will use this as your story to help remind others that they are good enough.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. Another question that I guess is kind of related-ish is can you recommend books or podcasts that you're listening to right now? Or I would even love to know books that have shaped you, or things that you've read that have been really influential in your life.
It depends on what area, because I would say from an emotions perspective, because of our topic today, the one book that really changed my life is by Dr. Brené Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection. That book, her TED Talk, as a matter of fact, that's how we ended up being on Oprah's live class, because I told everybody. I was tweeting about it. I had blogs. I said, you need to watch Dr. Brené Brown. She has a TED Talk on vulnerability, but also her book on The Gifts of Imperfection freed me. This was how I knew that shame wasn't mine to carry, but it's just a normal and natural human condition. If you're living a full life, you will experience shame, fear, but it's not who you are. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. It's you're human. And if you don't feel shame, then it means that, there's something else going on.
And I love that book. I am obsessed with Brené Brown. My family knows. I've made them watch the YouTube talk maybe 20 times with my sisters and my mother.
And who I'm crushing on right now, Karen, I don't know if you know Karen Bayron, Cinderella is Dead. I have actually been reading a lot of fiction. I started reading fiction again because a lot of my reading was always around work. And it's really hard always reading about white supremacy and anti-racism. And, it really just sometimes, just crushes your imagination. So I actually took a break from reading, workbooks or, leadership books. And I've been indulging in, that teenage young girl. What would she do? So her books, The Poison Heart and Cinderella is Dead, They're just such beautiful depictions of young Black girls with magic and pursuing things. And in this, they're gonna free Cinderella and not go to the ball. They're like, we want our own ball. We don't want to marry anybody. If you want to marry a girl or whoever, it's just such a great book. So I love it as well.
So good to keep in mind. Okay, last question, and maybe like one more minute. What does self-care mean to you? You talked a lot about self-compassion, so I'd love to know even how you practice that in your life.
Self-care means to me, I mean, it looks, different in different ways, or on different days as well. Some days it looks like having a PD party. Like if it was a really shitty week, I'm gonna sit on the couch. I'll sit with my gremlins. I'll listen to them. We'll hang out, right? But like with every party, it needs an ending. Sometimes that looks like not taking a shower all day because this is what my body called for. But sometimes it looks like waking up early, journaling. This is why I actually created the Success Planner, which is one of my products, having a gratitude practice. And also self-care looks like community. So having sister talk, having my friends, leaning on my friends and sharing space with them. So it really all depends. But the number one thing that I would say that I have learned, because when I understood that our bodies are not a container for trauma and that my silence will not save me, that changed everything. So the biggest self-care lesson, I guess you can say, is speaking my truth in whichever way that is, whether it's on paper, speaking it out loud to others, but use your voice. Using my voice is probably my biggest form of self-care, advocating for myself that way.
That's incredible. I know I'm going to need to take a lot of time to reflect on everything you said. Even your impromptu answers to questions have been lessons in themselves. I'm so thankful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for spending time with us. As you know, the session was recorded, so there'll be folks who are tuning in later who'll get to hear from you, and I'm so excited about that. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch.
Yes,
thank you so
everyone.
much.
And the last thing I want to say, another thing, a form of self-care that really emboldened me also in my confidence and self-esteem. These earrings are from an Indigenous designer, Warren Scott. This dress is from a Black designer. I also prioritize spending my money with the Black, Indigenous, and women of color community, because I know what it took for them to bring their dreams to life. So that's also a form of self-care, because when I'm walking through, let me tell you, I'm walking with my head taller and my shoulders back because I know I'm walking with greatness. And thank you all for being here today, and looking forward to staying connected with all of you. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Karlyn. For all the participants, we'll have like a 4 or 5 minute break, and then we'll get ready for Dr. Muna's session. Karlyn, I'll chat with you later. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Bye.